Hello, my name is Thibault, and I want to thank you for joining me for my presentation of my final project proposal presentation on the end item data packages for our Office Incorporated, Customer Office Incorporated, and Government Office. In conjunction with our office's system objectives and total quality management system, continuous improvement projects to rationalize and enhance our current processes by reducing cost and cycle time without a reduction in quality have become the imperative. It has proven to be beneficial in our other processes across the business to utilize online digital electronic delivery and storage systems. The augmented use of our current existing secured SharePoint application could be beneficial for the end item data review and approval process. The following presentation, I will describe to you why I think the SharePoint will help improve this process. Now, the overview of the situation is that the current manual method and media used to present the required end item data packages for the deliverable item is wasteful by means of materials, cost, and time management situations. As I mentioned before, the objectives of tool quality management, the EIDP process has been identified as needing automation and rationalization. SharePoint is a viable option in obtaining such improvement. As a part of the deliverable requirement per the customer contract, an end item data package shall be delivered for each unit. Also, as a requirement, the deliverable requires approval from all three parties, which includes the quality department of our office, customer office, and the government office. Currently, the process for review and approval is not entirely electronic and requires submittal via hard copy media, which currently we use CDRs, and those cost money. This media is then hand-delivered to the offices of the approving parties on site. These parties may or may not be available at the given time, which can increase delivery time. This process is cumbersome and is not cost-effective, especially considering that we do have the option of tailoring SharePoint for the entire process, and it is obtainable and highly feasible. So also to mention, there is not a media specified in the current contract, so that leaves us open to other options. We are not defined as having to use a hard copy CDR. During the approval process, the manual transport and signing and delivery is quite cumbersome because often, as you can imagine, you would take the media down the hall to the other side of the building, and then the representative is not there, you have to come back later. It just does not make any sense. So determine whether to change the SharePoint for the review and submittal to determine whether it would be acceptable. I have had interviews with the stakeholders and discussed this at the quarterly project review meetings that we hold every quarter. And the analysis of the existing process and the design of the new process has been mapped. The spectrum of changes considered low risk because it is classified as an automation and rationalization change. While the risk and returns are minimal, it does align with our office's total quality management system. So here is the process map, which I just mentioned, and it shows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 steps. Each of these 7 steps actually has little subset steps in it, but this is the basic process. And as I said, our office creates and reviews and approves the EIDP, so that's actually 3 steps. Our office submits the data to the customer office via SharePoint. So at this point, we are using SharePoint, and it does work well. This is what gave me the idea to continue the rest of the process using SharePoint. So the remote customers, they review and approve on SharePoint, but then CDs have to be burned and signed off by the local rep. So the offsite rep approves, burns the CDs, and then have to walk them down the hall to the customer rep, and he literally stamps the label on the CD. So then the CDs are delivered to the government office local rep for review and signature, where they do the review in its entirety there. This is not a parallel review. So once they approve, the corresponding unit to which this data applies is approved and shipped. Then, after, the CDs are mailed via FedEx to a remote customer office site. So that is another cost right there. So the opportunity is SharePoint is used as the strategic option. So the packages should be submitted, tracked, and approved via this online solution. The SharePoint system that is currently in use for the preliminary approvals between customer office and our office could be easily retrofitted to have approvals for all parties, and also have the government office apply this system as well. So here we show the alternative state cycle. And as you can see, it's much shorter. So there are basically 4 steps here. And so our office would create and approve the end item data packages. The data is given to the quality department from test department and production. Packages put together. We do review and approval, and then we post it to the SharePoint. That's where the customer office would electronically review and approve it. And then in parallel at this point, the government office could also be reviewing the same data because it's located in the same area. So we don't have an electronic version and a CD version. So that minimizes the risk of errors as well. And when it's done, it's there on SharePoint, it's approved, and that's where it's also stored, because the SharePoint is through our customer office. So that would satisfy the deliverable requirement. So the benefits of this option would be to eliminate the costs of the materials for CDRs, labels, and cases. Last year, the cost was $1,200, which seems minimal, but I will explain to you why that's important. And it eliminates the shipping cost via FedEx. It reduces cycle time greatly, so we take out the whole hand delivery process entirely. It would then reduce labor costs hourly, because since the cycle time is shorter, the labor costs would be less. And it frees up time for more productive activities. So rather than delivering material back and forth, we can be working on other projects. So the implementation of SharePoint across our other existing our office processes, as well as benchmarking from other sites, have identified the benefits and risks of using the online collaboration tool. Below here we have a summary of the many benefits and the few risks of the opportunity. So as I talked about in the last slide, here was a few years ago what the cost was, because we were still not in the production phase. Last year we started in production phase, so the number of units became greater. This year we are already almost doubling, and the forecast deliveries increase per year. So each year we have more and more deliveries required for the contract. So the cost savings becomes greater over time. So it makes sense to improve the process now so we can see the benefits later, as well as immediately. So there are a few risks of this strategic option. Possibility of SharePoint connectivity issues. The user may lose their password, or their certificate might expire, or they might get locked out. And then, as always, for any online project, there is the risk of security breaches. But historically, these issues have been very seldom. There is an IT department already in place for these types of issues. Heavy encryption is in place with verified certificate authentication. There are many steps to go through to gain access to the secure SharePoint. Parallel strategy will be used to deploy the new process to prevent line down situations. So we can, while we're implementing the new process, continue to use the CDs as a backup just in case, so there will never be a stop shipment or a line down situation. So because this change would be to automation and rationalization of the process, that spectrum of change is low risk, and the change is not classified as a re-engineering or paradigm shift, so it's not high risk at all. Key success factors. So in order to implement the change to the new system, planned organizational change is required, of course, and in order to execute the change successfully, the process design must be analyzed. So that has been done. As presented, the change has been identified, the analysis of the existing processes has been presented, and the design for the new process has been established. So there are 2 more steps to follow: the implementation process upon the stakeholders' approval of this proposal, and the continuous measurement to follow to ensure that the process is working to measure success or aging. So once the green light is given to move forward with this project, there are very manageable key success factors remaining. So to get it rolling, we need all required parties to apply for access to the secure SharePoint server, and there is an approval required for the government office reps through their delegating authority. So that has already been approved. Training on the new submission process for all parties. So there will be training and documentation of the process. Disaster recovery process defined. And so, like I said, we could always fall back on the hard copy, or we have disaster recovery process for our online systems. And then we will perform a post-implementation audit schedule. So, so we can do the continuous measurement and follow up on whether it's working or if the process is aging. It's also very important that when a business implements a new technology or strategy, that is acceptable to the cultural organization. So as I had mentioned in the introduction, all of the affected parties have been apprised and none have been objectionable to the idea from the start. So to maintain that positivity, it's crucial that the implementation be rolled out from the top level, which is why I'm making this proposal to the program. So the final recommendation and implementation plan, considering the low risk, the many benefits presented that affect several cross-functional teams, and the ease of implementing a few changes to a system that is already being utilized across many other aspects of the business. The recommendation is simple and the implementation plan is feasible. So we would first need the stakeholders to agree on the forward plan with a timeline of parallel implementation. When parallel implementation starts and a direct cutover strategy begins. It would be suggested that it would be implemented by the end of the second quarter to make sure that the process is working before the next contract begins. Give IT the go-ahead to incorporate the scripts for the SharePoint functions, document the new procedures and training methods, acquire necessary permissions for access for all affected employees and representatives, and train the employees and representatives. Start a parallel implementation to mitigate possible snags, as I had mentioned before. Audit the process to identify possible errors or inadequacies. roll out the cutover strategy once that it's been defined that the errors are proven out. And finally, due to the ease and low risk of the suggested improvements, we would experience the benefits immediately. So that was my presentation. I suggest you take your time to think it over and get back with me with any questions if you desire. And I'm available anytime for contact, and please consider the plan. Thank you very much.